Ladies and gentlemen, the World Endurance Championship is back, and I am back. I haven't posted much in quite a while. I did that one random track guide video, but that's been about it. So I've decided I'm going to crawl out of my hole and start doing content again. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the WEC Prologue at Sebring. So, to start off, in session 1, you had, starting off where they ended off last year, Toyota, the number 7, was the fastest out of anyone with a 1 minute 51.223. Second up, overall, was the real team WRT number 41, which is an LMP2, with a 151.640. Third was the number 36 Alpine with a 151.695. Fourth was the number 31 WRT with a 151.703. And fifth was the Prema car, the number 9, with a 151.710. So one of the big things that you might have noticed in there is the lack of hypercars in that top 5. There were 2 out of 4. Now, the Glickenhaus can generally, you don't always expect them to be in the top 5, but the number 8 Toyota was notably absent from the top 5 all the way down in 11th overall, which is quite a notable topic, which we'll elaborate more on later. That was the only session where a hypercar was the fastest. Besides that, it was LMP2s, the fastest out of anyone, which is very surprising and could set up an interesting storyline for Sebring where you might have an LMP2 win a race overall. And right now it's looking like it might be one of the WRTs because, as we'll talk about later, the WRT cars were very fast. They were very fast in this session, which was kind of the rain session. It was rainy for almost the entire session, and they had to stop at some points, but they didn't end up getting a bunch of times in still. It wasn't like they rained the whole session out, but yeah, those WRT guys were quite fast, and they were quite fast throughout the rest of the prologue. And as we'll talk about later, it seemed like the real team WRT number 41 car was faster than the WRT team car number 31. So now let's go ahead and talk about the fastest in class. Obviously, winning overall was the number 7 Toyota with a 151.223. Second, like we had talked about earlier, the number 41 Real Team WRT with a 151.640. In LMP2 Pro-Am, the number 35 Team Ultimate car with a 152.870. GTE Pro, the Porsche number 92 with a 158.543. And in GTEM, the Team Project 1, number 46, with a 159.573. Now, we'll talk about this later as well, but the number 92 Porsche was one of the fastest GTE, or by far the fastest GTE Pro car out of the entire prologue. As a matter of fact, they only weren't fastest in one session, which was the 4th session, which we'll talk about later. Moving on to session number 2, which was later on that day on Saturday. The fastest out of anyone is actually Prema, the number 9 with a 149.084. Second was the number 36 Alpine with a 149.210. Third, the Ricard Mille number 1 with a 149.407. Fourth, the number AF Corsa, or the number 83 AF Corsa car with a 149.435. And fifth, the 708 Glickenhaus with a 149.436. Now, the number 83 AF Corsa car is actually a Pro-Am car, so it's cool to see one of them up there. I actually haven't checked, but I assume that was a pro driver that set that time, but cool to see a Pro-Am car in the top 5. Moving on to fastest times by class. As we had talked about just a minute ago, the number 36 Alpine was fastest in the hypercar class with a 149.210. Fastest in LMP2 and fastest overall, the Prema number 9 with a 149.084. Fastest in the Pro-Am division, the AF Corsa number 83 LMP2 with a 149.435. I believe they moved that car up from GTE AM to LMP2, so that's interesting to see. GTE Pro, again, the number 92 Porsche with a 156.494. And in GTEM, the number 60 Iron Lynx car with a 158.227. So, again, the number 92 Porsche is fastest out of the GTE Pro class. Also, again, cool to see a Pro-Am car in the top 5 overall in the LMP2 Pro-Am division. And then Iron Lynx, the fastest GTEM car. Now, there was kind of a randomness to who was leading GTE Pro. It's kind of one of the most competitive classes. I mean, them and the P2 cars are both pretty close on pace and makes for pretty fun showings and makes for situations like this where you have kind of random class leaders or whatever. So that's always interesting to see. So moving on to session number 3, which took place on Sunday morning. Fastest overall was the Real Team WRT number 41 with a 148.089. Second was the WRT number 31 with a 148.372. Third, the United Autosports 22 with a 148.572. Fourth, the number 36 Alpine with a 148.707. And fifth, the Team Penske number 5 with a 148.751. So let me dig into a couple of things here before we get into the results by class. Again, Real Team WRT is very fast. This is actually the fastest time of the weekend because Sunday night times were a little bit slower. So fastest time of the weekend for Real Team WRT, and WRT won too. So that's pretty interesting to see. The number 5 Team Penske car, I believe that's a new entry. I haven't checked my facts on that, but they weren't there last year. And I think that's the thing for Porsche or whatever they're doing next year for the LMDH program. But yeah, interesting to see the Penske car is already relatively fast. Again, Alpine in the top 5, though not leading the session. But they're, again, up there, which, as we'll talk about later, they were actually the only hypercar team, actually only team at all, to be top 5 in all 4 sessions. Again, the hypercars, actually there was only, as you can see, 1 car in the top 5 that was a hypercar. The rest were LMP2s. The other hypercars, Toyota number 8 was 9th, Glickenhaus 708 was 10th, and the number 7 Toyota was 17th. They only were faster than 1 or 2 LMP2s. So moving on to the by-class results, obviously Alpine fastest in the hypercar division. They were the only hypercar in the top 5. Real Team WRT, fastest overall. Again, AF Corsa was the fastest Pro-Am car with a 149.345. Again, Porsche, the fastest GTE Pro car with a 155.315. And in GTEM, the Dempsey Proton number 77 of a 157.573. So on Sunday, as we'll again talk about in a minute, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to end up talking about at the end of this video. The Dempsey Proton cars were the fastest out of the GTEM division, which most of the time set in this session were the fastest out of the weekend for whatever class they're in, with the notable exception of Alpine. But otherwise, Real Team had the fastest overall time, which was set in session 3. Porsche, the number 92, that was the fastest pro time, and then Dempsey Proton had the fastest AM time of the day. Now, moving on to session number 4, was actually led by United Autosports, the number 22 car. They set a 148.439. Second, the number 36 Alpine with a 148.617. Third, the WRT number 31 with a 148.709. Fourth, the number 9 Prema with a 148.954. And fifth, the number 23 United Autosports car with a 149.044. Again, you only had 1 hypercar in the top 5. The other cars outside the top 5 were the 708 Glickenhaus in 6th, the number 8 Toyota in 8th, and the number 7 Toyota in 13th. So again, very close to the bottom of the session. Interesting to see United Autosports up at the top there. They really hadn't been too present throughout the other sessions. I believe they were in the top 5 like one other time, but nice for them to come out and be fastest in the final session of the day. So cool for United Autosports. As for fastest in class, again, the number 36 Alpine, fastest in the hypercars, fastest overall, and in LMP2 was the number 22 United Autosports. P2 Pro-Am, you have the number 45 Algarve Pro car with a 149.679. Fastest in GT Pro, finally not the 92 Corvette, is the 92 Porsche. Was the 64 Corvette with a 156.476. And fastest in GTM again is the Dempsey Proton 77 with a 157.787. The session was a bit different. You know, you had a lot of different people up at the top, especially in GT Pro and LMP2. Real Team wasn't even in the top 5, and I actually think the 92 Porsche was third out of the GT Pros. So the generally faster guys were actually a little bit slower in this session, and times are a little bit slower overall. So just to compare, the fastest time from the session 4 was a 148.439, and the fastest from session 3 was a 148.089. There were a couple of teams that were faster in session 4 than they were in session 3, though most teams were faster in session 3. But Alpine set the fastest hypercar time in session 4, and Prema had improved their time and set their fastest of the weekend in session 4 as well, which is stuff I know because of the stuff we're going to talk about next, which is the fastest times throughout the entire weekend. So this is going to encompass stuff from all the sessions, though it's only really stuff from the 3rd and 4th session, just because of, you know, the way it worked. The Saturday was mainly for working cars out. So fastest time overall, as I alluded to previously, the number 41 Real Team WRT car, flexing their muscles with a 148.089. Second, the WRT number 31 with a 148. That's not right. So, excuse my crude animation there, but I swapped a 7 and a 3. So, second was the Team WRT number 31. Swipe something on my screen with a 148.372. Third fastest was the number 22 United Autosports car with a 148.439, which I believe was actually, yes, was from session 4. Fourth, the number 36 Alpine with a 148.617. Fifth, the Team Penske number 5 with a 148.751. And sixth, the Prema number 9 with a 148.594. That were the fastest times throughout the weekend, the fastest 6, because I could fit another one on my screen. So that is the fastest times overall. Looking at it by class, the hypercars, their fastest times were Alpine with a 148.617, Toyota number 8 with a 149.101, third, Glickenhaus 708 with a 149.151, and fourth, the Toyota number 7 with a 149.549, which, as I talked about earlier, I believe, Toyota number 7 was quite slow in every session except the first one, which was rainy. So I don't think that's a broader message about Toyota. Maybe they had some issue with the car or something, considering the number 8 was pretty competitive and generally near the other Glickenhaus. I'm sure there is elements of sandbagging and just, you know, maybe they had something to figure out on the car with the 7 Toyota that just made it so that they were slower throughout the weekend. But it is very interesting that the number 7 Toyota, the car that won Le Mans last year and I believe won the championship as well, was quite slow. So that was very interesting to see. So as you see here, I've got the fastest in each session pulled up. I think I'm only doing that for hypercars and GTE Pros because I could fit it on the screen because there weren't enough cars. Fastest in session 1 was the Toyota number 7, which, again, rain, it's a different thing. And then 2, 3, and 4 were all 36 Alpine. So moving on to LMP2, the faster, turns out, of the 2 LMP classes. I guess hypercars kind of an LMP class, close enough. Fastest, as we've talked about multiple times, the Real Team WRT number 41. Second fastest, the WRT number 31. Third fastest, the United Autosports number 22. Fourth fastest, Team Penske number 5. Fifth, Prema number 9. And sixth, the Ricard Mille number 1 with a 149.015. Moving on to GT Pro, No real surprise that the number 92 Porsche was the fastest with a 155.315. More than a second back was the number 64 Corvette with a 156.409. More than a second back of their teammate, the number 91 Porsche with a 156.507 in third. And then down at the bottom, the two AF Corsa cars, the 51 and then the 52 at a 156.871 and a 157.197 respectively. It's odd to see the AF Corsa cars down that low. I mean, they're almost, the 52 is almost 2 seconds off the 92's time, and they were all pretty far down near the bottom in most sessions. I think they were the bottom two in at least 3 and 4. I hadn't checked for 1 and 2, but I assume similar results there. Fastest in sessions 1 through 3, the 92 Porsche, and fastest in session 4, the 64 Corvette. Obviously, we already talked about that earlier, but just was going to throw that in there. Next up, GTE Pro. The Dempsey Proton number 77 had a really good Sunday, and they set a 157.573. Second, the Team Project 1 number 46, which I believe also had a 157.573. That's what the timing screen said. I didn't look right, but I guess they had the same time. Third, the Dempsey Proton 88, only about a half a tenth off their teammate at a 157.615. Fourth, the Team Project 1 number 56 at a 157.798. I said it right this time. Fifth, the Iron Lynx number 60 at a 158.148. And sixth, the Northwest AMR number 98 at a 158.149. I don't think I talked about them at all, really, throughout this video, but they popped up there in the GTE AM fastest times. So that is the general overview of fast times. Now, here's where it gets into my opinions. So, first up, Alpine's fast. As I had talked about earlier, again, I believe, they were the only car that was in the top 5 overall out of every session in the Prologue, so looking pretty good for Alpine. Another headline from Hypercar was that the number 7 Toyota was pretty slow throughout most of the sessions. Glickenhaus was reasonably close to the Toyotas, which there's probably an element of sandbagging in there, but the Glickenhaus being close is pretty good. They're also downsizing to 1 car instead of 2 for the entire season, and then for Le Mans, they're going to be running the 708 and the 709. So they're not going to be running 2 cars full-time, though I guess they didn't exactly do it full-time last year because they only came in after a couple of races. Anyways, moving on to LMP2, the P2s are fast. The issue with these hypercars that has came up is that they're not always faster than the P2s, and that has definitely shown its head at Sebring. I wonder if we could end up with a situation where a P2 actually wins the race. Just considering the fact that the P1s, or the hypercars, only won 1 session throughout the entire weekend, and that was the rained out session. It's interesting. It's very interesting that the LMP2s are that quick. Again, I don't think it's a big deal, but you could end up with a situation where an LMP2 could at least be competitive in the fight for the win of the Sebring 1000. GTE Pro, it's clear that the 92 is fast. I'll just kind of have to see what's going on with the Corvettes. I believe they're bringing the 63 and the 64 for next weekend, the Sebring 1000. And they'll also be doing the Sebring 12 hours with IMSA in the next day. So the drivers, those guys are going to be getting a lot of work, I'm sure. But I believe everything I said there is right. I might have just spewed a load of crap. But so I was wrong. They're both doing 1. The 64 is doing the 1,000 miles of Sebring, and I guess the 3, as it is in IMSA, is doing the 12 hours of Sebring. So that makes more sense. I don't know why I didn't think about that. I'm kind of an idiot. Anyways, so that is the main headlines, I guess, for GTE Pro. I guess the other thing, maybe, the 92 Porsche is a lot faster than the 91. So that's an interesting thing. And then of course, it seems to be quite slow. So I don't know exactly what that is. They seem to be very far off the pace of the Porsches and the Corvettes. GTEM, obviously anyone's game, but the Dempsey Proton guys seemed to be generally faster. Team Project 1 was also up there. Iron Lynx was also pretty close. So I'd say those 5 cars, the two Dempsey Proton cars, the 2 Team Project 1 cars, and then the Iron Lynx car, probably going to be who's competing, but it's testing, you never know. So that is my wrap-up of the WEC Prologue at Sebring. So this next week is going to be quite interesting. You're going to have Sebring 1000, Sebring 12 Hours, and IndyCar on Sunday. So a lot of motorsport for me to cover. I'm going to, I think, merge those into one video per day. So I guess Thursday is only WEC. Wednesday is only WEC. Thursday is WEC and IMSA. Friday is WEC and IMSA. Saturday is IMSA and IndyCar. And Sunday is IndyCar. So that is going to be a lot of videos, but I'll do it. So I guess that's most of what I've got for this video. So thank you guys all so much for watching. I'm back. So yeah, that's about all I've got. I'll see you guys all then. Bye.